So I'm in a rubber band ball part 66, and the ball is huge. Look at me behind it. You can't even see me. And I put it on the scale, and it weighs 630 pounds. But we're going to get it even bigger and keep on adding bands. And my friend Brennan and I began placing bands for a very long time. And a lot of people say it looks like an egg now and not a ball, but it's very hard to keep it round because it's so big. And we try our best. And after we finished with the pile, I messed around with it, tried to throw balls on it, and then dunked with it. And I compared it next to this tiny rubber band ball and my head, then fell off of it and took it back on the scale to weigh it in at 655 pounds. So, like if I should keep on going. So I'm now to rubber band ball part 67, and we actually made a couple more tiny rubber band balls. Here they are on a mini trampoline, and the big one was too big for it, so we just put it on the scale and weighed it in at 655 pounds. And now it's time to make it bigger. I dumped out a whole nother pile. Then my friend and I got to placing bands for a really long time. And the bigger this ball gets, the harder it is for it to look bigger. So we got to add a lot of bands every time. And we finished up the pile, and then I wanted to test if it would go through a doorway, and it wouldn't. It's too big now. And I failed trying to get it back on the scale, so we had to both push it on the scale and weigh it in at 679 pounds. So, like, if you want me to keep on going. So one day it was rubber band ball part 68, and the rubber band ball is now almost 700 pounds, but today we're going to get it there. And somebody in the last video commented to get colored rubber bands, so I got these black rubber bands so you can see them placed on the ball. And the cool thing about two different colors is you can see them all going onto the ball. And it took us quite a while, but eventually we got it done. And the ball looks really cool now. It looks kind of three-dimensional. Look at it. The black bands are more sleek than the other ones. And the ball is so massive. Look at it in comparison to my head. Then I zeroed out the scale and put it back on, and it weighed 706 pounds. So, like, if I should keep on adding bands. So one day someone commented that I should make a second rubber band ball, and I already have three. This one, and my giant one. This one's huge. I can sit on it, but not sit on the other ones because they weigh 0.6 pounds and 15 pounds. Well, the giant one is 777 pounds, but I'm still waiting on a shipment of bands, so I'm going to add on to the other one. I just grabbed a bunch of random bands at Walmart, then went back to the warehouse, threw the ball on the table, dumped out a bunch of bands, and got to placing. I started with all the colored bands to make it look really cool, and it did. It ended up looking like this. It was cool. Then I moved on to these ones to make it really tight and compact. And after a while, I was done. Here it is. Rolled it off the table and compared it next to the giant ball, then my head, and then threw it as high as I could. And it's pretty bouncy and weighs 17 pounds. Like if I should keep doing this ball too. So I'm now to part 69 of my giant rubber band ball, and it's now over 700 pounds, but we're going to get it even bigger. I dumped out 25 pounds of bands to place on the ball, and I started placing with the help of my friend Brendan. And we actually placed 3 bands at once the whole time to make it go by a lot quicker. Until eventually we were done. I stood on it and then tried to walk on it and tried to walk again. It was actually kind of successful. Then I pushed it over here, dropped this ball on it, jumped on it, and then we tried to figure out how to get on the scale and weighed it in at 727 pounds. So, like, if you want me to keep on adding bands. So I'm now all the way to rubber band ball part 70. It knocked over all these crates. Then I zeroed out the scale and weighed it in at 730 pounds, and it was time to add a bunch more bands. So my friend Brennan and I got busy placing this entire pile, which took so long, and we ended up taking a break and coming back the next day to finish it. But eventually it was done, and the ball is now even bigger. Look at it next to my head, me jumping on it, then me rolling it to Brendan, him rolling it back even faster, then dunking on it, and we weighed it back in at 755 pounds. So, like, if you want me to keep on adding bands. So it's now rubber band ball part 71, and this ball is insanely massive at 750 pounds, but we're going to make it even bigger. And this time, half the bands are these half-inch bands that I've never tested before, so we'll see how they go. And the bands were just really tight, so we ended up moving the ball to see if it would make it better, and it did, because none of the bands had been placed on that side that much. And it also helped make the ball more even. But eventually, after a long time, we were done. The ball is huge. Here I am trying to stand on it and walk on it and almost fall. I dropped some Orbeez on it, threw a water balloon at it, and crushed a water balloon, and then weighed it in at 777 pounds. So, like this video if you want me to keep on adding bands. So it's rubber band ball part 72, and the ball's a little messed up from a video that's not out yet, but it still weighs 775 pounds, so we're going to keep on adding bands. And this time I got these special blue bands. And we began fixing up the ball and making it look cooler with these blue bands. And we kept on rotating it, that way the bands would be spread more evenly, and it would be easier to place the bands. And after a very long time, we were done. I about crashed into the wall, then jumped on it, and dropped my phone. Now, this ball is completely insane. Here's next to the little ball next to me, and then I struggled to put it on the scale, but got it and weighed it at over 800 pounds. Like if I should keep on going. So it's rubber band ball part 73, and I about knocked over a fan with it and struggled to make it over to the scale, but weighed it in at 800 pounds. But we're going to add even more bands. And the ball still looks kind of broken, so hopefully after we place all these bands, it looks a lot neater. And the ball is finally getting close to 1,000 pounds, which is what the scale maxes out at. And we kept turning the ball to make it as round as possible. And after a long while of placing bands, we were finished. And the ball does look a lot neater. I jumped on it like this. Then it accidentally moved the couch when I was trying to make it over to the scale. Brendan tried pushing it on, but failed alone. So we both had to push it, and it weighed 829 pounds. I then pushed it off and took it outside to show the cows. Yeah, they thought it was pretty cool. Like if I should keep on going. So it's rubber band ball part 74, and the ball won't fit through a doorway. It's over 800 pounds, and it's looking kind of rough. But we're on our way to 1,000 pounds, and we're going to get it there. We dumped out a bunch more bands, and we've been using this same band for a while. They still work on the ball, but we almost need bigger bands. We kept on placing until it was done. And it's actually getting hard to jump on because it's so tall. I pulled a stray band onto it, and then crushed this box, and then pulled it to the scale. And at first, the scale was acting broken, but eventually it weighed in at 842 pounds. So, like if you want me to keep on adding bands. So one day it was rubber band ball part 75, and I rolled it across the warehouse and then put it on the scale, and it weighed 842 pounds. We dumped out a whole bunch more rubber bands and got to placing. The ball is really heavy and hard to move around, so we do our best to not place the bands in the same spot and try to keep it as round as possible. We finished the pile, and the camera just doesn't do the ball justice. I've moved it to the distance to kind of get an idea of how big it is, and then I slammed into the ball, dunked on it, totally done, and then tried to move it with the hoverboard, but failed, so I spun around and put it on the scale, but we kind of broke it, and it wouldn't read, but it's probably 870. So it's rubber band ball part 76, and I tried to prove it weighs 870 pounds, but the scale's been broken, probably from the rubber band ball, but we're just going to keep adding bands anyway. We dumped out a huge pile of rubber bands and got to placing. And this really is a lot more work than it looks like, band after band for so long. We flipped it to make it cover the blue side, and then we were done. It looks really good, and it's probably within 5 pounds of 900 pounds. Here I am laying next to it and then jumping on it and trying to run on it. I pushed the ball, tried to get a run, and then fell, and then did it again. Kind of got one. Yeah, pretty cool. Like if I should keep going to 1,000. So it's giant rubber band ball part 77, and the scale doesn't really work anymore, but it's 920 pounds. We're so close to 1,000 pounds, and we're going to get it there soon. This pile weighs 25 pounds, and we placed the entire thing, which took quite a while, but eventually we were done, and I jumped on it, then sat on it, then laid next to it, then accidentally rolled it into the bang and drank it anyway, like if I should keep on going. It's now rubber band ball part 78, and the ball is so close to 1,000 pounds. The scale's broke, but the ball should be about 945 pounds, and we're placing a bunch more bands. We eventually rolled the ball to a higher point, that way it would be easier to get the bands around the ball. We did this for a while until eventually we were done. This band flew in the sky. The ball should be about 970 pounds, and it's huge. My friend Brendan did this, then I fell off it onto a beanbag, and like if I should keep on going. So I'm now to rubber band ball part 80, and I'm going to add all these rubber bands to my 970 pound ball. And after this video, the ball should be within inches of 1,000 pounds. And we don't know for sure the weight because my current scale is broken, but I have a new one that weighs up to 5,000 pounds on the way. Eventually, we finished the pile, and it looked like this. It's insane. I crushed a can, then drank the rest of it, and then here's it next to my head, and here's the broken scale, like if we should keep on going. Now rubber band ball part 81, and I bought this new scale that weighs up to 5,000 pounds. It weighed the ball in at 990 pounds, and today we're going to get it over 1,000 pounds. I also wanted to try some different strategies, these big mover bands and looping these 12-inch bands. I thought looping these 12-inch bands sounded the easiest because you could just loop them together and then wrap them around. We dumped out a bunch of bands like this and then started looping. We looped for a while and decided to go ahead and place one on, and it looked pretty good, so we kept on going until we had the entire pile finished. We ended up with these two giant links of bands. We wrapped one all the way around it, which made me kind of dizzy, and then wrapped the other one until we were done. And the ball looked pretty good. We weighed it in over 1,000 pounds, finally. I was pretty excited. So now we just got to get to the new world record, like if I should keep going. So it's giant rubber band ball part 82, and I got a sample amount of these giant green rubber bands to test them out. They work really well, but for now I only have these rubber bands. The ball's just over 1,000 pounds, and these bands barely work anymore. They're way too tight. We had to prop the ball up as tall as possible to even fit the bands, but after a long time we were done with the entire pile. It's a little wonky, but here it is. Then here's me jumping on it, rolling around a little bit, and jumping off. And it was time to weigh it in. We got it on the scale, and it was going back and forth between 1,020 and 1,040, like if I should keep on going. So this is part 83 of my over 1,000 pound rubber band ball. I bought a bunch more of these stretchier bands to try to put on the ball because they're a lot easier than the other bands, but they're way more expensive. And I put a poll on my YouTube to see if people wanted me to keep going or cut the ball in half, and 90% say keep going, so that's what I'm going to do. And if I want to beat the world record, I'm going to have to find a cheaper way to add a lot more weight really fast. And the scale wasn't really reading right because we kept knocking it off on accident, but the ball should be around 1,050 pounds. Like to keep on going. So it's rubber band ball part 84, and I got another big box with 5 5-pound bags of rubber bands. And since the bands are too big to get on the ball now, we're going to have to loop them into 2 giant strands like this. We spent about an hour doing this, looping the entire pile until we had 2 giant strands. And we didn't know the best way to go about putting them on the ball. We moved everything out of the way and then realized eventually if someone was standing on a chair and then we ran around, it was easy, but it made us really dizzy. Eventually we finished off the entire pile using this method, and then for the second pile, we moved the ball over a little bit to add bands on this side. And we figured out wrapping around like this was a lot easier and took like half the time. And the ball actually looks pretty cool now. I stood on it, then we pushed it onto the scale, and it weighs about 1,070 pounds, like if I should keep on going.
It's rubber band ball part 85, and I dumped out all these 12-inch rubber bands to loop them together and place them around the ball. My friend Brennan and I spent about an hour looping 25 pounds of these bands until we had 2 giant strands. And since in the last video we finally figured out the best method to loop them around, that was the easiest part. Here's the final strand, and it didn't take that long until it was completely covered. I tightened it on the ball, and this is what 25 pounds looks like. And here's a painting of the rubber band ball, then me next to it, then up close. And to be honest, I don't know how to work this super expensive scale I bought very well, but between all the pounds of bands I bought, it should weigh around 1,100 pounds. And it's a big ball. Like for me to keep going.